Now Dwight apparently cannot hear us. So here is Bubka with pole in the air. And here he comes, Bubka at 19.5 3/4. Good run, good run. That's it. A new world indoor record for the 8th time since December 28th, Bill. Bubka, 19.5 3/4. And this capacity crowd at the Forum is on its feet. Oh, what a moment for the young Russian. This capacity crowd is on its feet, applauding the Russian, Sergei Bubka, 19.5 3/4.
As you were saying, Mike, that's an extraordinary rivalry. In fact, that's the 8th time.
Better, as we take you through for 5 full hours, right up to 6 o'clock on Wide World of Sports. Amongst the goodies, the gruelling Triple M Triathlon in Sydney, where the super athletes of the 80s slug it out in the water, on the push bike, and on the road. The Triple M Triathlon, just one of the many reasons you shouldn't miss 5 fabulous hours of Wide World of Sports next Saturday afternoon, right here on 9.
Understood ever since. Brisbane's Peter Smart had a crack at it in an almost identical plane over the last couple of weeks, but a cyclone off the West Australian coast meant he missed out by 1.5 days. Smart was disappointed, but full of admiration for Smithy.
To do what he did in 1927 was a phenomenal effort.
There's certainly no hero worship between former Australian Rugby League coach and captain Wally Lewis. In an article this week, Fernley claimed Lewis was not fit to be Australian captain because of his attitude to training, and at the same time questioned the Queensland players' dedication at international level. It almost started a border war, but that will come when New South Wales takes on Queensland in the State of Origin series later this year. Meanwhile, Wally Lewis has given it to Fernley with both barrels.
No secret to anybody that Terry Fernley and I don't see eye to eye, and I can assure you that we certainly aren't best of friends.
Another footballer not short on words, the great Ron Barassi, but the man who invented verbal tirades was merely responding to guests who helped celebrate his 50th birthday. And to show there's still plenty of wind left, Barassi huffed and puffed at the candles. He was looking real good until the last one. Like Barassi in his footballing days, it wouldn't say die. Certainly no shortage of condition for this fellow, Grant Kenny, as he scooted home for his second state Ironman title at Caloundra last weekend. Kenny claims he's over nagging injuries and is in prime condition for the Australian titles later this month. The injury toll and the question marks over fitness can't fill anyone with confidence as the Australian Davis Cup team left for New Zealand this week for the first round series. Pat Cash has been selected despite the fact he hasn't played since Wimbledon. Paul McNamee is getting over illness, while his mate Peter McNamara still has a question mark over that gammy knee. Of the fully fit 3 players, Fitzy's form has been indifferent, while Wally Masur and South Australia's Mark Woodford are yet to prove themselves. Woodford was even more to the point, describing his form as...
it's so-so.
Here's a man whose form is hot, despite being 56 years old. Peter Thompson is the king of golf's senior circuit, and at the Rich River Country Club on the New South Wales-Victoria border, he's way out in front. The inaugural Australian Seniors carries $30,000 in prize money. Not much when you consider Thompson won $1 million in America last year, but it's a beginning. At the other end of the age scale, Mark O'Meara won the Australian Masters at Huntingdale last weekend by a stroke from David Graham. Graham needed this putt to force a sudden death playoff. It didn't come off, so on went the Masters jacket with a little help from the defending champion, Bernard Langer. Gambling is one of this country's favourite pastimes. Now you can do it on the America's Cup without knowing too much about 12-metre racing. A panel headed by Cup-winning skipper John Bertrand will be releasing a once-a-month computer form guide. John assures us it will be as accurate as possible, but can we put our house on the predictions?
Well, put it on the computer, but don't blame me.
The things some people do for charity. 300 hardy souls took part in the annual raft race at Templestowe near Melbourne. For most, it was 30 minutes of unbelievable endurance, belted with rotten eggs and tomatoes for the entire journey. It was stuff men are made of. Maybe the Army could use these shots for the next recruiting campaign. Still on people who will do anything for kicks, a week-long race from Sydney to Melbourne began on Friday. This is the pretty sight as they set off in hot air balloons. But throughout the week,
Sport chose to go on a collision course, and it began in Richmond, Virginia, with the Miller 400. What was to be a round of the NASCAR series looked more like your local roundabout in peak hour. If it also seemed as though they were driving in the dark, then it really was a panel beater's nightmare. In the pits, they spent so much time putting cars back together that some drivers even had to clean their own windscreens on the run. The caution flag waved for most of the day, and they're still wondering how Kyle Petty survived to get the checkered variety. The main collision in cricket involved poor old Mike Gadding's hooter. He came home from the West Indies after catching one full in the face off Malcolm Marshall. Gadding made no excuses, and what could you say to a question like this?
Whereabouts in the nose? Just I think X marks the spot quite aptly, actually.
Gadding's injury might well have done his career a big favour. England lost that first test by 10 wickets, once again crashing to an awesome Windies pace attack. Sadly for the Poms, the only bowler they have back home of similar speed is this machine, which puts them down at about 140 kilometres an hour. But for English cricket, the real collision is with the beliefs of these Trinidad protesters. In the biggest march ever seen in the Caribbean, 5,000 of them took to the streets to protest over the English cricket tour, or at least those members of the touring party who played in South Africa. At least Marvis Frazier and James Smith kept their differences inside a boxing ring. With a father like former heavyweight legend Joe Frazier, you might say that Marvis has a bit to live up to. And in Richmond, California, he did just that, with a unanimous points decision in round 6. Not bruised enough yet? We'll take a ride in the Cardboard Classic, Michigan's rough and tumble tribute to the humble old cardboard carton. What you must have underneath is just that. But what the top looks like is up to the imagination. How about a 1933 Ford Roadster, complete with custom paint job? Or a superbike, or even a jet fighter? The Dragon took the honours in this race, but the Fox might have won had his tail not been alight. The Gremlins even found their way indoors, where in Ohio 3 runners got themselves into a tangle over an 800-metre time trial. More bruises for the boys, but at least they were back on their feet soon afterwards. In Madrid, most people expected Englishman Linford Christie to get run off his feet by 2 Russians in the men's 200 metres. The Soviets even had the inside running, but Linford had the finish.
Christie's even closing on him, and Christie's won it! Christie has won the gold medal!
And what a week it was for Olympic marathon champ Joni Benoit. Out of 10 of America's top athletes, she was chosen for the Amateur Union's prestigious Sullivan Award, and what better way to celebrate than with a husband's hug. In the winner's circle too was Doug Tuel, who carved up the course for a final round of 63 in the Los Angeles Open. Doug won by 7 strokes to take out the $60,000 first prize. If he fancied using clubs like this one, Doug might like to try a little medieval mangling of the type they enjoy in Arizona. It's the World Series of Jousting. All you need is your own suit of armour and you can join the charge, even if it is playground stuff.
We both lost an arm.
What a way to fight for